Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network. The broadcast shows are for informational and entertainment purposes only. They are not designed to provide listeners with specific personal, medical, or counseling advice. Individuals with a medical issue should always consult their healthcare provider. MS&Me is not responsible for content of individual shows. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own. Enjoy the show.
Hello, this is Rebecca Naylor, health coach with Chronically Well Club, still celebrating living 20 years with multiple sclerosis in remission, and creating this show to help you, my listeners, discover your own power to heal and recreate your life. So I'm really enjoying, this is my 20th show today, and I'm super excited that this has been going on with the MS Global Support Network since August of last year. And I have just had such an amazing experience bringing great guests on the show and learning about so many different perspectives. So for those of you tuning in for the first time, I like to take a very holistic approach to healing when it comes to MS and life in general. So on this show, I will talk about many different things, including these key areas: diet, toxins, emotions, movement, community, cognition, environment, gut, and mindset. So we're going to be talking about a number of different things today, and some of the things that we're going to talk about are primarily about mindset and belief, and probably a little bit about your cognition and community as well. So I'd like to introduce a very special guest speaker, a dear friend of mine and definitely a mentor, Reverend Helen Vallow, who is the spiritual director of a place called the Center for Spiritual Living here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So welcome to the show, Helen.
Thank you.
I'm going to introduce Helen by reading her bio so you can get a feeling for what she has done and what she brings to this interview. So Helen Vallow believes that every person has the potential to live a life of genuine happiness and purpose. As a minister, speaker, teacher, coach, and certified heart math facilitator, Helen is passionate about uncovering how our limiting beliefs hold us back from taking action and supporting people in living from their heart. Her inspiration brings new clarity and consciousness to people's lives and businesses. Helen is a senior facilitator for Hoffman Institute Canada since 1995. She founded her coaching and speaking business in 2010 and published her first book, A Year of Possibilities, a workbook that provides a structured daily practice to support people in taking action and manifesting their vision. Her second book, 100 Minutes of Inspiration, provides a daily reminder that you can change your life. Helen's mission is to inspire others to find the power within to deal with what life throws at them with grace, dignity, and compassion, to live from the heart and respond from unconditional love. I think that is a wonderful, wonderful description of who I see you as, Helen. So Helen and I have known each other for coming on 10 years now, since I first started coming to the center. And has been a very key part of my developing my mindset and belief system that has really contributed to me taking ownership of my health and my life. So I'm really excited to have her on the show today to talk about how we can use our mindset and our beliefs to impact our health. Our health, yes. Okay, so let's get started. Let's dive into this. There's so much great stuff to talk about. So the Center for Spiritual Living is part of something called the New Thought movement, and it's a type of teaching and philosophy that has really been powerful for me. So Helen, can you begin, just bring it into layman's terms. What is this New Thought teaching for our listeners?
Well, New Thought is old thought in that New Thought started in the 1800s with the Transcendentalists in Boston, in the Maine area of the United States. And what they started to realize, and if you read any of the authors from that time, such as Ralph Waldo Emerson, Thoreau, Walt Whitman, to name a few, they believed that every single individual on this planet had a powerful mind that they could utilize, each person can utilize to bring health and well-being into themselves, but also affect positive change in the world.
That's amazing. So there are two things that I really wanted to focus on as part of the New Thought teaching, because they're kind of my mantras that have really gelled for me when it comes to me and my health and my wellness. And the two ideas are that thoughts become things and that what you focus on expands. So I would love for you to explain those two concepts.
Well, our thoughts are like energy. They're like electricity. We can't see electricity, but we experience the results of electricity. And we can use electricity in two ways, just like we can use the power of our thoughts in two ways. With electricity, we can turn on a light switch. The light illuminates the room. Now, we don't see the electricity, but we see the results of the illuminated room. Mm-hmm. You can also stick your finger into a light socket.
You could.
And electrocute yourself. That would be a destructive way of using electricity.
Okay. Yeah.
Same with our thoughts. We can focus our minds and really train our minds to be so laser focused on gratitude, on health, on how we want to show up or who we want to be in our life, on peace, on love, on empowerment. But unfortunately, we are not taught that. We are taught to focus on fear, lack, and limitation.
Definitely with our current media. Just watch the news.
It's all over the place. We're bombarded by it. So there is a real, what we call a collective consciousness of a demographic that focuses in on the fear aspect of what's happening in the news or in social media. And you have the power to shift that.
That's something I've talked about a lot on this show as a health coach, is this idea of when we are in a state of fear, in a state of stress, I mean, there are physical chemical things that are happening in our body in terms of adrenaline and cortisol and the gut microbiome getting out of balance. And these things really do directly result in ill health or disease, right? So there really is a connection. That's a really great way of illustrating it. So great segue. So let's look at this new thought idea, this idea that we can use our mindset and our beliefs and what we focus on, what we ruminate on, to influence our health. And notice I said influence because we can't necessarily make all the decisions. But as you said to me earlier, we can respond to situations. So how can we use this new thought teaching to apply it to our health and wellness?
Well, I think first of all, it's by becoming aware of what it is we are thinking and focusing on, and are we getting caught up in, oh my God, that's not going to work for me, I don't know what to do, I'm powerless, everybody else knows more than I do, and so therefore I'm helpless and I am a victim to my circumstances. And the moment we go into that, it's exactly like what you said, Rebecca. We have a physiological response in our body. We start to build adrenaline and cortisol, which doesn't allow us to really change our mindset or to understand that there could be a completely different picture going on here.
Right.
Because we become so tunnel visioned and focused on the fear, and especially when you get a diagnosis like MS or a cancer diagnosis, that's a big diagnosis. And are you going to have that automatic fear? Absolutely. That's, I think that's part of our normal human reaction to something. It's like if there was a saber-toothed tiger coming at me, I'm going to react in fear.
It's funny, I joke that it was a blessing to be diagnosed at 17 because I actually didn't react with fear, because when you're a teenager, you think you're invincible. You're like, yeah, whatever, screw you.
You don't have that front neocortex of your brain developed to really understand.
I didn't really get it yet. I was like, no, that's not going to happen. That's probably the best thing ever, right?
Probably.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we talked in previous shows again about this difference between the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So for anyone who's tuning in for the first time, your sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight response. It's that fear-based response of, oh my God, I'm uncertain, I don't have control, I don't have the information I need. Those are the three main causes of stress. And I'm panicking, and all my blood is going to my limbs, thinking that I need to run, and I feel like I have to pee because my bladder is trying to empty itself, because I think that I have to run from that saber-toothed tiger, right?
Exactly.
And we don't have those tigers in our lives anymore, but we do have really busy highways, and we
have other stressors.
stresses at work, and we have relationship stresses, and it's the same thing for our body. It responds in that same way. And when we spend all of our days in that sympathetic state, our brain is doing that kind of ruminating. Oh my God, I'm out of control. This is not working. I'm never going to get out of this. And as you talked about, what you focus on expands, right? And then you have the parasympathetic system. That's what we call the rest and digest. So how does it benefit us when we're in that rest and digest parasympathetic state in terms of new thought?
Well, the moment that you start to shift your mindset into gratitude, appreciation, really acknowledging the courage you have, because when you're diagnosed with something, it takes a lot of courage to be open, to be looking for all the information. So you start focusing on these emotions that are actually going to decrease the cortisol level in your body and allow you to have that resting period where you can then start to use the front neocortex of your brain to imagine and get clear for yourself on what the other possibilities could be for yourself.
That's huge. I did a show a few months ago on visualization, and that's one of the things that I was talking about is, are you spending your whole day visualizing yourself in a wheelchair, in a hospital bed, alone, or are you visualizing yourself healthy and strong and running and in sunshine and spending time with your family? Because that does have an impact.
Yeah, there's a great quote by Napoleon Hill that says, what you think about, you become.
You become. Yeah.
And this is where it's really about training your mind. And we have a great saying in New Thought teaching that a trained mind is more powerful than an untrained mind. And so when we start to use that mental muscle, and it's just like going to the gym, you have to build the muscle, and you have to really focus on the muscle in order for it to fire properly, in order to build the muscle. So the more that you start to focus on gratitude, appreciation, your courage, what it is that you desire to experience, maybe even just in having a great support system and being able to acknowledge and receive, because receptivity plays a big part in this as well,
Right.
of really opening your mind to receive new ideas, new thoughts, but also perhaps generosity from others and support from others, and being willing to allow that energy to really enter into your body as well as your mind, so that you're lowering those cortisol levels and you are in your parasympathetic, you're utilizing your parasympathetic nervous system. And what you also do is get down not only into a different headspace, you get down into a heart space.
Right. I really like that you talked about that, because I feel like for me, especially, I've had MS for 20 years now, but for more than 10 years before that, my dad had MS. So I've grown up with MS my whole life. And one of the challenges that I watched my dad face was the inability to accept help. And the inability to accept help from people, but also from mobility devices. Like for years, he resisted using a cane because he was like, no, I'm only 35. I'm not going to use a cane, And then I was 17, I get diagnosed, I use a cane, and okay, so he comes home the next day and he has a cane. But having that defense up of, I don't need help. If I take help, people will think I'm weak, or, this kind of thing. That is a negative state. That's something that it's like you're living on the defensive. It's almost a kind of self-sabotage, because receiving a gift is healing.
Very healing.
Right.
And it's one of the most potent healing experiences is to be in a place of receptivity. And most people don't receive it because they don't believe they're worth it,
Right.
or they're feeling ashamed that they actually require help.
Right.
And the thing is nobody does this life alone.
Yeah.
We all need support, and we all need help, and we need community. And, one of the most important things is to really surround yourself with people who see the wholeness of who you are, not just your dis-ease.
And sometimes when you don't accept a gift of help from somebody, you're actually hurting them, because it's almost like you're doing them a disservice, because people like to help. Like, we are hardwired to want to help others. Just go into an elementary school, high school even, and watch when the teacher says, who wants to take the attendance down? How many kids put up their hand? Because everybody likes to help.
Yes.
Right? It's just naturally in there. So when a person is trying to reach out and trying to help, and then their help is being rejected or pushed away, that can actually create a real distance between people in their interpersonal relationships as well. And that in turn can come back and have negative health consequences also, I find.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about an experience I had last summer here at the Center for Spiritual Living. I was working with one of the other reverends, Reverend Jonathan Zenz, and taking a class here. And this is when I really started to get into the New Thought philosophy applicable to health. That was sort of the last stepping stone that was holding me back from really embracing this philosophy. I'd applied it to every other area of my life, but then I was like, yeah, but then there's the MS. That's different somehow. And it was working with Jonathan that really helped me to understand this piece. Okay, so here's what it was for me. I thought I got stuck in this trap of, if I'm responsible for my thoughts and thoughts become things, and if I want to know what I'm thinking, I just look at my circumstances and my reality, and that's what I'm thinking, then it must be my fault that I have MS. And I couldn't accept that. I couldn't accept that I caused it. Like, this is my erroneous thinking, right? I thought, well, that means I caused it. That means it's my fault. That means, X, Y, Z. And through that class, I really was able to get over that blame piece, because I was helped to understand that I'm not responsible for the diagnosis, but as we mentioned earlier, I do have the responsibility to choose how I respond to my situation. And for me, that removed the element of blame. So it's like, no, it's not your fault that you have MS, but as this has happened, you now have control of, like we said, the response. So how do you see that working?
Well, I agree. You're not responsible for your diagnoses. Nobody is. Nobody decides that they're going to get a disease.
Yes.
No, it's like, we wouldn't choose that. It's not a normal thing. But what we can look at is, just within our own consciousness, how are we bringing ourselves to what is happening? And this is where we do have choice and we do have control. And for anyone, it's, no diagnosis is a great thing. Yet we have this power to shift our own vibrational level, and how we bring ourselves to a situation. And this is where I believe miracles happen. And I don't say miracles in terms of curing a diagnosis, because healing is not curing. Healing is the revealing of our own inner gifts and beauty and our own love. And when we can do that, then everything changes. Because we have just shifted from a vibrational energy of victim and powerlessness, shame, guilt, and probably self-blame, or blaming other things and other circumstances. And we rise above that. We transcend it to one where we can be in peace, where we can be in dignity and clarity in our own mind, that, first of all, we are not the diagnoses. That's not who you are.
No.
It is an experience you are having. And when you start to come back to, I'm more than that, and I can then respond appropriately and really start to trust what's going to be most loving, healthy, and beneficial for me? What choices am I going to make that are going to support me now in living vibrantly?
And the choice is so important. I'm going to share like a very personal story now that really shifted things for me last year in that class. And in shows that we've actually talked a lot about bladder and bowel issues, and we try and just like get it out on the table because a lot of people with MS have those issues with that. And when I was working with Reverend Jonathan last year, I never told him what the issue was because it was a class, full class setting. Here I am, of course, telling the whole world on the internet. But at the time, I wasn't ready. And I didn't tell him that, like, the one thing that was holding me back by the end of the course is that because I had sometimes some problems with bladder urgency and frequency, I used to always wear like panty liners, and I was so fearful and so paranoid almost of having an accident, or, it's like it started to really impact my day-to-day living. So it was like, can I accept this invitation? Am I driving? Am I in control? Will I be able to pull over? Are we taking TTC? Well, what if the train stops and I can't get to a bathroom? It just became everything was about whether I could get to a bathroom. And listeners, I know that you can relate to this. So many of you have reached out to me about this issue. And what I realized was holding me back was that I had used so many other different areas of lifestyle medicine to actually help the bladder issues so that they were almost gone. But what was holding me back was the fact that I always carried 5 different incontinence pads in my purse for emergency. And it's like, I couldn't leave the house without them. And as long as I kept bringing them, that was actually keeping me in a state of fear, because every day when I packed them in my bag and put them in, I was constantly thinking, I might need these, I might lose control of my bladder, this could happen. And then I was envisioning all the ways that could possibly happen. As a result, what happens? I release cortisol and adrenaline in my body, which causes what? The desire to pee. So this is a great direct example of how ruminating on a fear actually can produce the feared results, right?
Yeah,
and so what finally happened is I took them out of my bag and I stopped packing them, and I've never needed them since. So it really was it's not that it was all in my head in the beginning, but that my choices were either making it better or contributing to the problem. Right?
Yeah, and I think this is where you can also use the power of visualization to say, okay, how can I respond if something were to happen? How could I respond in the kindest, gentlest, most compassionate way for myself?
Right.
And when you start to really imagine it and focus your mind that you have the power to really take care of yourself on not only a physical level, but emotionally and mentally, you end up feeling more empowered because you can do it. And you also cross over what I call the shame barriers, the shame shields of like, oh my God, if somebody else knew and how horrible that would be and they judge me. And
let me tell you, getting on public radio and telling your story really helps you get over that fear. That's not a problem for me anymore. You know what? But it actually is really liberating. It comes back to that idea of having the support and accepting the help, is that I turn to my listeners and my community and the people who watch my video blogs all the time to be like, hey, I'm not on a pedestal here. I'm learning too. And this is what's happening with me. And I need some support, please. Like, I need to receive. Just yesterday, I posted something where I was like, wow, something difficult just happened. I really need to receive some support. And wow, did I ever. I was inundated with support and felt amazing. And it really did help to up my vibration because I accepted that gift.
Well, that's it. And, we don't do it alone. And, the idea that we're to be this dysfunctionally independent being and not need anybody or anything is such an old false belief that I think has been carried down and living in our DNA for generations. I'm supposed to be strong and stoic and not need anything. And it's like, wait a minute here, let's drop down into our hearts and really get connected to one another and be in that place of allowing and the giving and receiving. Because we're all in it together, whether you have MS or something else, or you're just trying to get through your day.
Yeah.
We are all in this together, and to have a support system and community and people in your life that are going to hold you in that really benevolent, loving space.
Yeah, we were talking about that just before the show, about this idea that, your vibe attracts your tribe, and that the people who you're surrounding yourself with have an impact on your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we have just a few minutes left to finish up. So I wanted to give you a chance to share some advice with our listeners. So for the people who are listening who have been diagnosed with a chronic illness, maybe they are feeling that loss of control, that lack of information. Maybe they've been listening to the show and going, oh crap, I totally do that. I ruminate all the time. Oh no. Sometimes that can actually feel bad, because it's like, it makes you feel worse temporarily, because it feels like, oh no, I'm doing everything wrong. So how can people get started in making the shift? Because for me, it's been a 10-year shift. This is not something that happened overnight. So what's step one? How do you get started on shifting that mindset?
Step one, gratitude. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is such a powerful tool. And I know that a lot of people talk about gratitude, and they're talking about it because it really does work. And to really start counting those blessings, or putting together what I call stackable moments of, okay, I did this really well, and this was a really great moment of connection with this person, and I'm so grateful for it. The other thing that does help a lot when you're in gratitude is it's a heart math technique, which is 25 years of science based on the heart, and really allowing those cortisol levels to drop. And that's called heart-focused breathing. And I know we breathe through our lungs, but when you actually put your hand on your heart space, and you slow down your breathing, and it's not a big, deep, heavy breath. It's just breathing in for 5 seconds and breathing out, while focusing on what you are grateful for or what you appreciate. And you do that for 5 minutes, and you will feel differently in your body. Now, you might not feel a radical difference the first time you do it. You have to keep doing it.
It's practice.
It's practice.
And what a great way to start your day.
It's so vital, so important.
Thank you so much for that really practical tip that our listeners can do to get started right away. We're almost out of time, so I want to just say we could have just talked forever, but thank you so much for being on the show, Helen. If our listeners are interested in learning more, how can they reach you?
You could go to the Center for Spiritual Living Toronto website.
Okay, and that address is
www.cslto.com.
Wonderful. Okay, and if you're interested in learning more about me, Rebecca Naylor, and my health coaching, you can check out my main website at chronicallywell.club, and you can also find more information on my video blogs and such. So I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube, so check us out there, and please send in your questions and comments. I would love to create a dialogue. And for now, as I'm sure Helen would agree with, you have the power, so create an amazing day for yourselves, and be well, everyone.